Good morning, friends. And we start, as usual, with the normal intro. Namo tasso bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Worthy, honorable, and perfectly self-enlightened is the blessed Buddha. This Dhamma talk is the second in a series which could be called Back to Basics. Last time I talked a little bit about producing peace by training the rule, the first Buddhist behavioral rule of not killing. This obviously produced peace in here, and out there in society. Otherwise, if you kill, there will be a lot of conflict in here, and out of society. The first precept, just to brush up, is basically laid down because it's impossible to kill another being without killing yourself also, in the sense that your future life length becomes shorter. The probability for you being hit by accident or disease becomes bigger. So the life length becomes shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter for each killing. Therefore one should not kill. You can say purely out of egoistical reasons, because one is clipping off with a salami tactic one's own future life, little by little. In the same way, in the same sense, you can say is the second precept, which says that one should not take what is not given freely to you specifically. Why not actually? Why cannot one steal if one keeps it secret? It's not secret for nature, and it's not secret for one's own mind, whatever one does. So there's no secrecy there. In the same way with killing, one increases one's future probability of being poor. The normal rationale of stealing something, or cheating, or fraud, make fraud with some kind of thing, assurance fraud, for example, writing wrong numbers on a bill, or so on, reporting the wrong numbers to some authority that pays you back, for example, taxation, and so on. It's all kinds of stealing. We don't call it stealing, but in the Buddhist sense, and from the sense of nature, it is stealing, because one is deliberately misappropriating value to oneself that didn't actually belong to oneself. This has the effect creating a probability wave, quantum mechanical probability wave that is everywhere, and then one will meet the echo of everywhere, wherever one go. In one's future time, one will have bad luck in business. One will have, if one will buy something, it's a higher price if one have not stolen it, stolen something in one's past. All things that makes one more poor, the probability for these events goes up. And all events that makes one more rich, more wealthy, the probability for these events occurring goes down. Then it's impossible not to be more poor in the future if you steal something. Then the opposite event, if you give something, then you become more rich. The normal, conventional rationale or logic, which only goes on the short run, is that if you steal something, you become more rich, you gain some value. That's also true on the very short run. But in the long run, you become more poor. On the other hand, vice versa, if you give something, the normal conventional rationale is that you become more poor, therefore you should not give something. But actually, because the probability goes up for you becoming wealthy on the long run, one becomes more rich by giving something on the long run. Secondly, the effect of one's happiness is the same. One thinks, if I steal something, then I become more happy because I become more rich. But that maybe also occur after 5 minutes. But already the next day, or the next month, or the next year, one will have regrets and remorse and therefore feel unhappy. One will look back and say, I did something evil. I did something wrong. I did something detestable. I stole from another being. This goes whether you steal from another being or from an institution or from a state. People say, usually, you can steal from the state. It doesn't matter because the state is so rich and they are so unfair. But that's no argument for stealing. Or stealing from the rich, or you can steal from them because they have enough, so they don't feel the theft so much. That doesn't count. That's their business. It's one's own business that counts in the future. Actually, you can say stealing from the state by taxation fraud, or stealing from an insurance company by assurance fraud is, I think, maybe even more detestable than stealing from a person, because it's like, for example, you've been made secretary from a sport club, which has some kind of common bank account or something. Then you take from this common good, this pool of common good. This also goes from the state. You take from a pool of common good. This money that you take when you don't pay your tax, or when you cheat the insurance company, they are taken from somebody else. Because they have to come in, they have to be built roads, bridges, hospitals, whatever. There has to be paid out assurance to those who are in accidents. So this is a very bad excuse for making fraud. Also with traveling expenses, one have been funded by some organization, public or private, and then one overbill the expenses and thereby cash in some amounts on the excuse that it was travel expenses, but it was not travel expenses at all. It was for one's private use. Whether it actually is discovered by others or not doesn't matter. The effect of one's future, both regarding wealth going down and happiness going down, this is parked out in nature, and it's parked in mind, and it's deposited in the heart. It is everywhere. One cannot run away from it. So you can say, from a purely egoistical point of view, one should not steal, because inevitably it always makes one unhappy and too poor. The probability of one becomes poor goes up in the future, and the probability of one becoming rich goes down. This can be very significant over a long time if it's accumulated many times, that one embezzles something or misappropriates some value, whether it's money or things or whatever that can be stolen or misappropriated. One does it deliberately, knowing that it's another person's value or another institution's value that one is misappropriating. It is there, this intention is formed to take it. It is right there, the karmic accumulation that is very negative. It is actually created. It is not created by stealing the thing itself. It is created in mind, by mind. and propagate it out everywhere as a wave of probability that cannot be erased again. This rule of not stealing, one can find in all religions. It's not only the second precept in Buddhism, you can also find it in the Ten Commandments, in Christianity, you can find it in the Muslim faith, you can find it in the Hindu faith, you can find it in all nature religions. Needless to say, when beings start to steal from each other, it will create disharmony in the society. So not only does it create individual unhappiness, it also creates, on a slowly accumulating level, social disharmony, eventually leading to conflict, war, revolution, and such things that often is violent. One will usually say, I can't take a little, doesn't matter. Yes, it does matter. Because if one say it doesn't matter, then one will do it again and again and again. And over a long life, one will have accumulated a lot of embezzlement, a lot of theft. One can repair this karmic effect again with delivering back what one has stolen, if possible, to either the person, if there is a person, if one knows the person, and then ask for forgiveness, admit it to the person, or to the institution, whether it's a state or something. Or one can give a similar, or even better, a greater amount to the same institution as a donation, or to the same person as a donation. So thereby repairing the karmic effect. If one delivers back to a specific person something one has stolen and asks for forgiveness, and he gives forgiveness, then the karmic accumulation is zero. Then one goes scot-free regarding that particular theft. Then it's repaired. There's a non-linear effect between the theft and the effect of the theft regarding who you steal from. So if you steal from a dog, let's say you steal a lump of food from a dog, how much is the effect? Yeah, in rough numbers, 1,000 times you will lose the lump of food, 1,000 lumps of food over some lifetimes from stealing from a dog. So it's 1,000 times 100%. So it means from a business point of view, it is extremely bad business. You don't need to be an accountant to understand that. You lose 1,000 times minimum what you gain by stealing. You gain initially, but then you'll use 1,000 times more. This is what you steal from a dog. If you steal it from a thief who also steals, then it's 1,000 times 1,000. It's 1,000,000. If you steal it from one who gives, who doesn't steal, a pure person regarding this giving and stealing thing aspect, then it's 1,000,000 times 1,000,000. This 1,000 billion times. You steal amount $1, but the accumulated karmic effect is that you're going to lose $1,000 billion over many lifetimes before the effect, the probability effect, is exhausted. That's very, very bad business. If you steal it from a noble, we say it's incalculable, asankheya. It cannot be calculated. If you steal it from a Buddha, it will take many universes before one will come back to zero. And since one cannot identify who's noble or not, who's pure or not, one can only formulate this one rule of thumb, not to steal at all. Whether it's from a dog, from a thief, from a pure person, or from a noble. One should not steal at all. This is the only safe, simple rule one can formulate from that thing. But one can do very, very bad by stealing from the wrong person. Adinadana is a saying in Pali. It simply means to take what is not given. If an institution or a person gives you something, it's gift like a gift or a personal gift, you can use it for anything. Then it's okay. But if it's given for this purpose, then you use it for that purpose. It's given for research, then one use it. Or for charity, then one use it for private consumption of whatever. Then we are into the gray area between stealing and cheating. The opposite of stealing is, of course, giving. This has the opposite effect of stealing, since the probability of getting richer over time, not only in this life, but also in the future lives to come, it goes up. Again, it's the same. If you give to the dog a lump of food, you will get that lump of food back 1,000 times in this life or in future lives before the karmic effect is exhausted. If you give it to a noble, you cannot, it's uncountable. If you give it to a Buddha, it will last many universal cycles of future lifetimes. One should give with a good heart. That's a story from the ancient text, the Tipitaka text, about this. It's a man who've been very rich and he has given, but he was not satisfied with the giving. And the story goes like this. Bimbisara, he comes to, King Bimbisara was Buddha's good friend. They had the same age. He comes one afternoon to the Buddha and visit him. And then the Buddha asks him, why do you come, King Bimbisara, here in the afternoon? The king answered, said he'd been taking out gold and silver, gold for 7 days and silver for 7 days out of a treasury of a personal banker inside the city, because this banker had no family. And then the rule was at that time, then the wealth goes to the king. So he can use it on the army and so on, use it on the city. And he came to ask a question about that, because they told him about this man, which now was dead, that he never enjoyed anything. He wore rag robes, and he eat broken rice, and he had a ramshackle cart, and his house was dilapidated. He never used any money, neither on himself nor on anybody else. And he was not very happy about his own situation. And this was very strange, because he was exorbitantly rich, money-wise. So King Bimbisara came to the Buddha and asked him, why was that so? And the Buddha looked back in this particular individual's past, and then he said, I will explain to you, King Bimbisara. This man, he was one asceti. This was this kind of a millionaire, which was usually also a private banker at the Buddha's time. And then one day he went to the king, then he saw a Pachika Buddha, private Buddha. And then he asked him, he was coming in his horse cart there, have you got any food today, Venerable? No, the Pachika Buddha answered. Then go to my house and say to the servants, you can get my food, my lunch. And then he went to the king, and the Pachika Buddha, he went there and got the food and went back to the forest. Then on the road there, he saw the king, or the millionaire, coming back from the king, and then he asked, did you get the food? Yes, he got the food. But then the millionaire saw he wasn't shaved. Pachika Buddha, they don't shave. They have hair 2 fingers width long, and also a beard 2 fingers width long, and they have very rough clothes. So he was saying, this dirty monk, I shouldn't have given it to him. He was dissatisfied with his giving. But nevertheless, he had given it. He had already given it. Because he made the afterthought second karma, connected with his first karma, he made this bad. He regretted his giving. He wanted to have it back, that he should have eaten it himself, this food, or given it to his waiters, or to his family, his wife and children. They should have enjoyed this food meant for him. He should not have given it to this dirty monk, which was fully enlightened. Because of that, Buddha told for 7 times he was a billionaire in this very town where he had given. But he never enjoyed any of his riches. Never. They have all stayed locked in his rooms in gold and silver. He never used it, neither on himself nor of others. And he was never happy about his riches. And now he had exhausted this karma, this 7 times lifetime lasting karma. So he will go to the fall down, we say. He will go to a lower level than human, be reborn as a lower level than human. This illustrates this karmic effect, how long-lasting it is, whether you give something or you steal something. There's a good rule about private economy in Buddhism, if we talk about giving and spending in general. I think also it's worth noticing that from a Buddhist point of view, it is not morally bad or evil or wrong in any way to be rich or wealthy. Not at all. Actually, it's a sign, like this rich man, that you have been giving or been generous in the past life, long ago, to somebody who are worthy of it, or to many who are needy. Because I have practiced this generosity, people are now rich. But as also said in the Bible, this one experienced very often as monk, when you go begging with your bowl, rich people, for some reason, maybe because they become more greedy by being rich, has a tendency not to give. When you go by your begging bowl, you go barefoot begging. It is the typical experience is if you go in a poor area in a town, you'll get a lot. If you go in a rich area in a town, you get almost nothing, if you get anything at all, even though they see you coming. So this is very strange. This will have the karmic effect of, as I said in the Bible, the first will come last and the last will come first. The rich will be poor and the poor will be rich. So it's kind of like oscillating between rich and poor if one stay at the human level. Here, locally where I live, there's a lot of reasonably poor people. They have become poor because of prior stealing. And this they also do today. This I've seen many times. They will typically steal the cardamom, a spice which has considerable value here. 1 kilo is the same, can be sold for the same as 1 day hire. So they steal the cardamom from the plantations here. And this means, of course, that they will be poor again in the future. They think they become more rich. They think it's kind of like Robin Hood stealing, because they are stealing from somebody they perceive as rich. The plantation owner, which in many cases is the state, but can also be private. But that's not the case. The future, nature, doesn't care who you steal from. It only cares about the stealing. This one often sees through karmic history that people repeat good habits and also bad habits. Habitual behavior over a long time. That then will make an oscillation in the karmic history, in samsara. Returning to Buddhist economy, we'll say if one has some income, how should one use it? How should one spend it in order to get the best outcome? One should use 1/5 on oneself, on one's own enjoyment, personal enjoyment. That's the purpose of getting wealth in the first place. It is to have some joy, some happiness from this richness one have earned by the sweat of one's own brow. There's nothing immoral or egoistic in using money on yourself, as long as it is money that is earned honestly and earnestly by the sweat of your own brow. Then it's okay. Then one should use 1/5 on the household, family, wife, children, guests, and so on. The 1/3 one should invest in one's business. So there's a growth of one's business in the future. The 4/5 one should put in the bank as a safeguard toward bad times in the future. And the final 1/5 one should give to those worthy of it and those who need it, those who are poor. Today everybody have a bank account. I don't have a bank account. But nevertheless, people have a bank account. They maybe have more than one bank account. But let's just say we can pool it in one bank account. And they can be plus or minus. This is very tangible and visible. You'll get a letter from their bank every month, or you can see it on the internet how much is on your bank account. And people are very, very conscious about that. A lot of speculation and unhappiness is about how much is on the bank account, whether it's above zero or below zero. What people do not generally understand is that there's another account that also contains an accumulation. An accumulation of what? An accumulation of future. An accumulation of probability for either being happy or being unhappy, of either being rich or being poor, of either being beautiful or being ugly, and so forth. Regarding all possible states that can't be attained in the future, there is an accumulation, a karmic accumulation, that contains probabilities for these or that events to occur or not. This can be demonstrated in a laboratory. This is a fact, an experimental fact. This means because we cannot see this account, because we have no feedback from this account, people will say, this account doesn't exist, it's not real. And therefore, they don't fear their karmic account going down as much as their bank account going down. But that's really foolish. Because let's say you steal something, and you put it in the bank and your bank account go up, yes, but your karmic account go down. And vice versa, if you give something, you take some money out of the bank and you give it to some poor or some worthy people, then your bank account go down, but your karmic account go up. The 1/5 rule assures that your bank account goes up, both now and later. It also assures, because of the giving, both to your own household and family, and also to those poor and also to those worthy, that your karmic account also goes up. So it's a win-win situation. Stealing is a lose-lose situation, because on the long run it will lead to loss, much greater loss than is initially gained. I know these rules of life, these precepts and general talk about morality and ethics is not popular today, but since they are so important, crucially important for society in general, for the harmony in society in general, and for everyone's personal welfare, I think they are worth mentioning. That we should really not throw out the baby with the bathwater. What we have got from our ancestors regarding rules of thumb of how to live, what to do and what not to do. This we should preserve, because they are not a prison. Morality is not a prison. It's an umbrella that protects you from bad events raining down on you in the future, unhappiness raining down on you in the future. Therefore, these back to basics rules has to be respected, has to be understood, not from a disciplinarian point of view, but from a point of view of elevating one's own future. And thereby also, if everybody does that, the future of a whole society and the happiness that is in that society, the harmony that is in that society. Thank you for your attention.
Do you have any questions? Yeah.
What happened with mind?
Over a period of time, things kept changing, and then they took up a bodhisattva vow because nobody was becoming arhats. So they tried to make the bodhisattva vow the main thing and put down any other teaching that said, no, let's get off the wheel now. Oh, but you're selfish if you don't take the bodhisattva vow. And that's what they're really teaching. There's a lot of books on the bodhisattva vow, how important it is. And the Tibetans have gone a step further and they say, well, the bodhisattva vow means that I am not going to attain Nibbana until all beings can attain Nibbana. Well, the Buddha couldn't do it. If he could, we wouldn't be here. So that's not a realistic vow, but it does stop people from attaining Nibbana. A bodhisattva vow is a vow to become a future Buddha. And when you start seeing how really difficult it is, after 5,000, 10,000, 100,000 lifetimes, and you start going, and I have to do this for 4 Mahakapas? No, I don't want to do that anymore. Now, they can be reborn when there is no Buddha era. And they're lost. That means they just keep going round and round on the wheel of samsara. Birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. And immeasurable amounts of suffering and pain. You know, I really do believe the statement that the Buddha made. If you put all of the tears from all of your lifetimes together, they would be bigger than the oceans. Because we've all suffered in so many lifetimes. Let's get off the wheel now and help other people get off the wheel. That's the one. But I tell people that if they've taken a bodhisattva vow, I'm not going to judge them whether they want to keep it or not. But if they want to let go of the bodhisattva vow, I tell them how they can do that. Then it's their choice. I don't care anymore.
So in a nutshell, what is the vow? What is the practice of it? How does it change how they live and how they practice?
It doesn't, basically. It doesn't. They take a vow that they're going to become a future Buddha, and they try to act compassionately. Some lifetimes they're good at it, some lifetimes they're bad at it. See, there's these 10 things, they're called perfections, that the Buddha developed. And there's 3 levels of development. And to be a future Buddha, you have to go through to the end of the development of each one of those good qualities. And it takes a long time to perfect it. I mean, Gautama Buddha was called an intelligent Buddha. It took him 4 Mahakapas and 100,000 lifetimes to become a Buddha. That's 4 expansions of the universe and contractions of the universe. 4 of those. That's a huge, long period of time. There are some bodhisattvas that are called energetic bodhisattvas. And it takes them 8 Mahakapas and 100,000 lifetimes. And then there is a moral Buddha. And a moral Buddha, it takes 16 Mahakapas and 100,000 lifetimes. So you're talking about huge expanses of time where there is big amounts of suffering that's happening. Some lifetimes you learn from, some you don't. It's not always perfecting one of these highly good qualities. And in some of the earlier texts, there's 32 qualities or 32 things that have to happen in order to become a real bodhisattva. And one of those things is making the vow in front of a Buddha. And he looks into the future and sees that you have the determination to do it. And he'll say yes. But a lot of people that take that vow now, it stops them from going deeper into meditation and experiencing Nibbana. That's the nature of the vow. And they will renounce that vow at some point because they haven't got the assurance that the Buddha said, or a Buddha said, yes, you will become a future Buddha. They don't happen all that often. In this Buddha era, we have 6 Buddhas that appear.
Is the Buddha era the 25,000?
No, we're talking long periods of time. And there's some Buddha eras that there's none. There's some Buddha eras that there's only one. So we're very, very lucky to be born in a time when there have been a lot of Buddhas, and we're in the dispensation of the Buddha right now. I mean, the merit that we have to make to be that close to a Buddha is stunning. It's really remarkable. So take advantage of it. Your choice. There's nothing that can be more precious than being around when we still have the suttas in reasonably good shape. And we can still decipher what the Buddha was talking about. Probably in another 700 to 1,000 years, all of these books will be lost. And then there's just some small suttas that people will use, and the understanding of Vinaya for monks, the rules of the monks, they won't even be able to recite one rule of being a monk. And that's at the end of this Buddha era. Ledi Sayadaw used to call this time, being so close to the time of the Buddha, he said, this is the age of saints. And we're in the age of saints. Every time somebody experiences Nibbana, they become a saint, which is a whole lot different than a lot of other traditions hold.
The main teaching, I think, if you say like a sutra, like a tantra, and like a dzogchen, the great perfection teaching, they're very, very similar. And probably also, you know, some of the historians might say there's influences between back and forth from each other. But today's, the way the form of Bön is very similar to Buddhists because there's influence back and forth from each other. So it's as far as basic principles of believing karma, reincarnation, enlightenment, they are just really like the same. There's not much of differences. Main differences is, I think, Bön as an indigenous tradition, it has a lot of what we call causal vehicle teachings. The teachings related with the nature, teachings related with the spirit of the natures, a lot of different forms of healing practices, and also I think people believe that the Tibetan whole knowledge of Tibetan medicine and astrology, there are also many of them are comes from the Bön tradition, and so there are a lot of practices related with that aspect. Nature and element practices are very earthy, very environmental, ecological spiritual type of practices are very much a kind of, I think, is a very unique, but which has now part of became like a Tibetan culture, you know, like usage of prayer flags, making smoke offerings. So there are many Tibetan culture-related practices and rituals are very important part of the Tibetan culture. And I think it's very important to understand. It also is very important, and to preserve that is a very valuable thing to have in Tibetan tradition. So that these are all, I think, originally coming from the Bön. Every time in history, a new religion, new idea, new philosophy comes in the place where already long standing of history, tradition, wisdom already there, it's always difficult to take place, to root there. So this is always, I think, it's a struggle. I think that's primary reason why there were a conflict, because it's new religion trying to come in and all having resistance to it. You know, I think that seems like a kind of normal process, but it is not that one is better than the other one. It's more that one is already there and one is new, and it's adapting. It's a process of conflict, resolving conflicts. And now, both in Tibet and in exile, the relationship are much more improving, especially now many years now, His Holiness Dalai Lama has accepted the Burn as a fifth major spiritual tradition of Tibet. So every official gathering, meeting, reunion, our His Holiness Lungto Tenpa Nyima Rinpoche is always present with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and there's not much of conflicts there. It's like a lot of harmony in between different traditions, and then more and more so now. Well, my teachers, His Holiness Lungto Tenpa Nyima Rinpoche and Yonze Tenzin Namdo Rinpoche, are really like the two main person in exile who have kept the flame alive and who have bridged the next generation to survive this transmission, knowledge, training. Otherwise, without these two people, and I think it's been really, really difficult. And when I was growing up, my teacher, Yonze Rinpoche, he used to talk about it, how difficult it is to preserve it, how difficult it is to teach to us, because we were a group of very young and immature and people. So as to training us was not easy job to preserve Burn tradition. After 59, when they came to India, and then that new generation came in India training, we are the first generation. So to whom they have transmitted. Now this generation now is kind of bringing back to Tibet, back into Tolpo area and new places like in the West. Yeah, there are a number of them. Obviously, historically, like in Menri Monastery, it's a most important one. And then in Tiden Norputse, which is in Nepal, which was original Tiden Norputse was in Tibet, where actually the seat of Nampa Shenrab. And these are like a very important monastery, which is in exile right now. And then in Tibet, of course, there's the original Menri Monastery, original Yungdungling Monastery, and these are historically very important. But as far as the sizes are concerned, there are now much more bigger monasteries where like 700,000 monks, like that, like in eastern Tibet, called Ngawa Nangjik Gun. So there are many monasteries, but in Tibet, Burn is among all the other schools. Maybe some people say it's like a second largest among 5 schools. Exact number I don't know, but there are more or less, maybe we are not that many. So more or less between 20 to 30 teachers coming to the West or living in the West, going back and forth teaching, and but we are all those who are doing it. We are very closely connected to each other, and in fact we are since last year at Lingmicha Institute started our reunion of all the masters teaching in the West, and that this year, next month, we are starting in another second meeting in California. So we are very closely working together and doing a project of translations of original Burn texts into English and other languages. So Burn tradition in the West, it's in kind of almost everywhere. In Europe, in Russia, and in US, and in Europe, many different places, and so it's kind of everywhere. We use a lot of webcast teachings, and we use giving online retreats or workshops, and the most important thing is we do the webcast, which is we do very regularly, and probably I'm not sure if how many other teachers are doing. There are a number of other teachers are doing, but I think probably we are one of the bigger people, how you say, in terms of the, for example, we have 12 live translations, and I'm not sure how many other teachers who are doing in webcasts has 12 languages live translation, and we will be anywhere from 28 to 40 countries any given time, and we do also regularly in a way like every month, sometime twice a month, like that webcast, which is free around the world. So we are doing and we are working to do real lot of more online. I think I'm not saying only Burn is important, like every indigenous tradition, every original cultures, I think are very important to understand the human history, to understand human potentiality, and particularly I think the Burn are a very important to understand because this Burn has so much profound knowledge. Anywhere, what I say usually, anywhere from raw element, working with the raw element, earth, water, fire, air, space, it's very ecological oriented practices to very psychological oriented to very ultimate liberation, achieving body of light. A body of light in the highest form of teaching in the Burn, in Dzogchen, a meditation of Dzogchen is the practices of the nature of mind, practices of inner awareness, inner light, practices of visions, practices with the sunlight, practice with the sky, practice in going into the dark room, experiencing a lot of visionary experiences. The outcome of that is to achieve a body of light. When you die, all your physical body transforms into light, body of light. So that is the ultimate goal. So all this knowledge exists in the Burn, therefore it's very important to preserve it.
Hello, if one is committed to the Theravada tradition but only has the possibility to join Mahayana, Vajrayana meditation centers in the area, should he or she continue practicing along the Theravada lines of practice or join the center nevertheless? Well, I don't think that it's an either-or. Of course, you can continue practicing Theravada and still attend a Buddhist center in a different tradition, if it's in your area. I know this question comes up a lot because Theravada Buddhist centers aren't as prevalent as those from Tibet or Zen or however. But you'd be surprised how often you find a sympathetic ear at some of these places. So first of all, you might find a teacher who is versed in the practice that you've done. Aaron, in fact, and I were attending a meditation group in the Tibetan tradition, but the head Lama was teaching from the Visuddhimagga. Now that may be a little bit rare, but he was quite amenable to our practice and actually came and did a meditation. The head Lama came and did a meditation course with me and was looking to learn to teach the meditation practice in this tradition. But even that not being the case, I think it's quite possible for you to attend these centers, or at least ask permission to use these centers. And I know some places, it depends on the place, some can probably be quite xenophobic or controlling and will maybe even forbid you from practicing other meditations in their center. But if you're just sitting quietly alone, I know at least in the Theravada tradition, people are generally quite amenable to have you use their center as a place to practice your own teachings. So you can go along with it and join in on the group chanting or whatever, and keep up your own practice. I mean, I guess it's obviously not a replacement for a teacher in the tradition that you're following, but there's certainly no harm in it, and often you'll meet people of like mind, and you find that other people who attend these centers may have experience and in the practice that you do, and are in a similar situation where they're just looking for a center, but they actually practice something else. And so you'll often find a sympathetic ear and community, which is important. You'll find something there. So definitely I recommend people go to these centers, check them out, and you'll find that they vary in quality. Some of them might be quite authentic, and some might be simply commercial ventures and so on. So check it out, and for sure I would recommend that.